about the Birchfield versus Hodges case the Supreme Court ruled on in 2015, aka the ruling that legalized same-sex marriage. I know many millennials and Gen Z grew up with queer representation in media, and we learned about how the government affected queer people's lives in terms of quality of life, and socially, we saw how prejudice and stereotypes negatively affected queer people, i.e., the Stonewall riots. All this set the stage for Birchwell versus Hodges to be taken to the Supreme Court to be contested. Now, what are the principles of this argument? It's to deny or grant the right for same sex couples to marry, the impact of gender equality on marriage, and religious bias on law. My stance on this issue is that to deny same sex marriage is a violation against the Constitution. I'm a Catholic Christian and I am aware of the Church's opinion, but I think it's inherent that the U.S. remains a place that upholds its model of freedom and allows same sex couples to marry legally. A great way to be able to digest this is to look at the history of marriage bans in the United States. We know that interracial relationships in marriage were prohibited in many states, and couples often had to travel states to be able to be married legally. This is where the story of James O. Birchfield comes in. A Birchfield fell in love with a man called John Arthur. Now, John Arthur was diagnosed with a life-threatening disease. The couple would decide to travel from Ohio State to Maryland, where same-sex marriage was legal. 3 months later, Arthur passed away, but because of Ohio State law, O. Birchfield was not listed as Arthur's surviving spouse. James O. Birchfield would state that he'd feel hurtful for the rest of his lifetime. Now, I know many people may not like comparing the gay rights movement and the women's movement, but I have to emphasize that because of gender equality as a society, we were able to see a relationship between two people that didn't contain a dominant man and a submissive woman. This translates into same-sex marriages. We know this argument is effective because Mary Ella Bonato, the representative for Birchfield's case, used this argument in favor of legalizing same-sex marriage nationally. In the recordings of the court discussion, Bonato says, "And again, because of equality and changing social circumstances, all those gender differences in the rights and responsibilities of the married pair have been eliminated." And that, of course, is a system in which committed same-sex couples fit quite well. The two main arguments against legalizing same-sex marriage is one, same-sex marriage was considered impossible half a century ago. When we think about how progressive America has gotten, we have to acknowledge that some things that are normal now were considered impossible a century ago, like women dominating the medical field and a black man becoming president. That shouldn't stop our progression, though. The second argument is that same-sex marriage is not biblical and a sin. America has a large Christian population, so this argument became very popular. What refutes this argument is that in our Constitution, there's a strong stance of the separation of church and state. I know I'm kind of a walking contradiction being a Christian and believing in the separation of church and state, but I grew up with a lot of queer people, so I witnessed a lot of their internal and external struggles. When we think about gay relationships in marriage, we often think of the couple themselves, but the children get affected too. Adopted or not, they feel a big sense of unworthiness, and no one should have to feel unworthy like that. Legalizing same-sex marriage is just as vital as legalizing interracial marriage because we are more familiar with queer relationships and we see how they can work in society due to gender equality. Same-sex marriage is still widely supported, and we see that couples deserve the same dignity as anyone else.